Welcome back to the All About Us podcast, where we sit down with people whose life experiences lead them to build something meaningful. I'm your host, Carl Allen. Today's guest is Christian Rasmussen, founder of Amentara, formerly known as Minnesota Nice Ethnobotanicals. Christian's journey is not a typical business story. It began with a personal struggle, moved through a season of deep healing, and eventually led to a mission centered around plant medicine and natural wellness. With a background in physics and real estate, Christian took an unexpected path after navigating benzodiazepine withdrawal and discovering the role that ethnobotanicals, particularly Amanita muscaria, played in his recovery and transformation. Today, he leads Amentara with a focus on responsible exploration of functional mushrooms and natural compounds, while also hosting the podcast, The Amanita Effect, where conversations around healing, science, and personal transformation continue to go. Christian, welcome to the All About Us podcast show. How are you doing today?
Thanks so much for having me, Carl. I'm doing really well, man. Doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing great. We have a lot in common because, first of all, we're both musicians. I started off at UCSD as a biophysics major, and then I
Really?
transferred. Yeah, I started
Cool.
off as a biophysics major, transferred to UCLA, and since UCLA didn't have biophysics, I switched to biochemistry, and they're both quite the same, except biophysics has a whole year of upper division physics that we don't have. And then after that, I got an MD PhD, and my PhD was in phytochemistry. And I don't know if you're aware what phytochemistry is, but that's the development of drugs and active metabolites from tropical and underwater plants.
Beautiful
So
synergy.
yeah, so we have a lot to talk about here. The beginning of your journey today, Christian. I'd like to start before Amentera, before the podcast. What did life look like for you?
Yeah, I was like you mentioned, I was in real estate in my 20s. I went to school for physics. I ended up dropping out when the '08 crisis happened and got into real estate. And I was really successful. I liked it. It was also it was a dopamine hit for me, right? Like it wasn't like it was fulfilling me at all, but it was enjoyable for me at the time. But I was also a poly drug addict. Like I was addicted to opiates and I was addicted to benzodiazepines. And for those that don't know, benzodiazepines are typical anti-anxiety medication. You think Xanax, Klonopin, Ativan, Valium, and they're notoriously known as some of the hardest drugs, if not the hardest drugs to get off of. And yeah, life was, I was a closeted addict. So like nobody really knew what was going on with me. But I was successful on the outside when things were starting to unravel on the inside. And it wasn't until like things started to unravel on the outside that I really realized that, okay, I need to make a really heavy adjustment. Otherwise I'm either A, going to die, or B, I'm not going to be able to accomplish the goals that I've set for myself in this
So
life.
you were talking about your professional job was a dopamine hit. So real estate, are you a natural born salesman? Is that what you like to do?
Yeah, I tend to be pretty good at sales.
Okay.
I'm good at conceptualizing bigger picture stuff and bringing it into reality. So like, I think, yeah, real estate was a way for me to do that on a level. I ended up working with my profession ended up being I started with flipping houses and I did all the work myself. I hated it. I did not like doing the construction work, but it was a way for me to get out the door. And then I got a rental portfolio and I helped other investors find and execute rental properties. So to build their portfolios. That was kind of that was my jam.
Okay. Okay. When someone goes through an experience like that, kind of like, a whole life reversal because of drug abuse, how does that change the direction of your life? And at what point did you realize you were searching for something different and maybe a healing of sorts?
It's funny because I think I always knew that, right? Like I always knew that there was something bigger for me out there and that I wasn't on the right path. And I think oftentimes in those types of situations, the universe will whisper to you. And then when you don't hear that, it'll talk a little bit louder. And then when you don't hear that, it'll start yelling a little bit. And then eventually, if you still don't hear that, like you're gonna get smacked upside the head really hard with a traumatic life experience. And like, that was, what I ended up having to go through. Getting off of benzos was one of the most difficult things I could ever imagine even having to go through. And it is as such because it lasts so long. So like, it's basically, for me, it was like a panic attack times 10, 24/7 for over a year, nonstop. And so at the end of this, I was like seriously contemplating ending my life. I was like,
Wow.
I was looking at maybe 5, 6, 7 more years of this pain when I stumbled across these mushrooms on a hike. And they were the traditional toadstool mushroom that you see in Alice in Wonderland and Mario Brothers. The Smurfs live under them. It's red mushroom with white dots, which is Amanita muscaria, as you mentioned before. And I've always known what these were, but I'd never tried them. And there was this extremely potent pull towards them, this magnetism. I like to liken it to when you meet somebody that's going to be a future close friend or a future partner, this like pull towards them, it's palpable, it's tangible. And I had that to a degree that I never experienced before in my life.
Okay. You speak openly about going through the benzodiazepine withdrawal. For
Yeah.
people who may not understand how serious that process can be, what was that period of your life like?
It was beyond awful. Yeah, like I mentioned, it was essentially like a panic attack times 10, 24/7 with a whole slew of physical symptoms as well. The physical symptoms are one thing, but it's the mental aspect that gets so draining. To me, it felt like everybody was out to get me and everything was out to get me. Everything seemed to work, against me consistently. And that any little thing could completely send my nervous system into overdrive and put me in a just pure panic state. So yeah, it was just pretty awful.
Okay, so what part of the country and where were you hiking at when you first came across this mushroom?
I was in Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota. Born and raised in Minnesota. I live in California now, but yeah, I was in Minnesota.
It's kind of weird because I've seen a lot of mushrooms, but I've only seen the red cat mushrooms, in drawings and on TV. In real life, I don't think I've ever seen a red cat mushroom with the white dots. So,
Where do you live?
well, lived in Pennsylvania as a child, and then, for most of my life, I was in California.
Sure. Yeah.
I just hadn't seen them. Your path eventually led you to the Amanita muscaria, which many people recognize from folklore, or even fairy tales, but don't fully understand it. How did you first come to an understanding of the medicinal characteristics concerning this mushroom?
So when I found them, there was that, like I mentioned, there was that extreme magnetism towards them. So I picked them and I went to the house and I did some research and I found in my research that first off, there was nobody really talking about them online positively. There was one woman talking about them. This is in 2020. One woman talking about them, claiming that she utilized them to heal her brain going through benzodiazepine withdrawal, which was enough for me to like, oh, okay, there's something. And I dug into the compounds in them, and I've always been very interested and fascinated in pharmacology. And I discovered that they hit the same systems that benzodiazepines damage, which is the GABA system and the glutamate system. And at that point, I realized like, okay, there's very likely something here for me. And if not, like screw it, I'm getting close to ending my life, so I'm willing to try anything at this point. So I tried them, and within like 2 weeks of microdosing, to me, it felt as if I was 60, 70, 80% healed. And it wasn't just that I was better while I was on them. I stopped at the end of that 2 weeks and I was still better. So it was as if they like rebalanced the GABA and glutamate system and my brain chemistry to internal homeostasis, which, to me was a miracle. Like, it was as if I had been drowning for a year and I could finally breathe again.
So, explain microdosing to my audience.
Yeah, so microdosing is essentially taking a sub-perceptual dose of really anything, but it's used more heavily in the plant medicine community. So the idea is instead of taking a dose that will send of like a psychedelic, we'll say that'll send somebody on a journey, you take a very, very small dose that you can still go, you barely notice it if you notice it at all, and you can still go about your day-to-day life. So but what it tends to do for most people is it allows people to make changes and adjustments and then change the way that their thoughts are coming in and how they process thoughts in a way that's in their day-to-day activities. Instead of having to go on a big journey to like pull out insights, you can take a really small microdose and go about your day and make little adjustments throughout the day that end up stacking and stacking over time. But yeah, it's basically just taking a sub-perceptual amount of a
So is the
compound.
Amanita, is that water soluble or is it hydrophobic?
It's rare. Well, yeah, the compounds in Amanita are
Okay, so there's no extraction method. So okay. There are a lot of myths surrounding Amanita. What are some of the biggest misconceptions you've heard of?
the biggest one is it's toxic and poisonous, and it's really really too bad, and it's been something that's been perpetuated for hundreds and hundreds of years, very likely since the Crusades. And you got to think like if you have it was so Amanita is like it's peppered throughout history. Some of the earliest depictions of Adam and Eve have them covering themselves with Amanita caps instead of the fig leaves that we hear about now. And there's countless depictions of Jesus with an Amanita head or his halo is red and white. And like it's literally peppered throughout a ton of different religions and it's very, very prevalent. And it what seems to have been used very frequently in ancient times. So when you have I like to play the thought experiment like, well, if somebody's in power and they're trying to dissuade people from something that takes them out of their paradigm that they're trying to build, they label it as toxic and poisonous. And so that myth has been perpetuated for years and years. And unfortunately, we have that myth still being perpetuated and very actively trying to be pushed. So for example, there was a study done, I think it was in the 90s, it might have been in the early 2000s, where they took ibotenic acid, which is one of the compounds in Amanita, and they synthesized it. And they took extremely large amounts of isolated ibotenic acid. Like we're talking the amounts that you would need hundreds of kilos of the actual mushrooms for insane amounts. And then they injected that directly into a rat's brain. Doesn't have to cross the blood-brain barrier, doesn't get broken down by the system, directly into the brain, and it creates a brain lesion. And they're like, oh, it's toxic, it creates brain lesions. And so like, unfortunately, they have methods to like, to dissuade people from things like this. But the actual test shows that in the amounts that are consumed by individuals that would be consuming this, not neurotoxic at all. It actually has a pretty safe profile to it. But yeah, that's the biggest myth is that it's toxic and poisonous. And that myth is perpetuated throughout the world. Like most cultures around the world think of this mushroom and think that it's poisonous. People say in Sweden, people think that you can't even touch it, which is complete BS.
So besides having similar metabolic pathways to the benzodiazepines, what other medical benefits have you found this particular mushroom has?
Most people come into it for anxiety, sleep, depression. Those are the big ones. Although it also has pretty potent anti-inflammatory properties, pretty potent pain relieving properties. Some people swear by it for things like Lyme disease, for Parkinson's. There's a really big scope of efficacy, but I think even above and beyond all of that, what it tends to do for people is it gives them space. And what I mean by that is like, if you're in a situation that would elicit a specific response, it tends to give one space in between, that instigating moment and then the response happening. And in that space, it also seems to gently nudge people towards choosing the path that's higher. So if somebody's in a sick, that would elicit anger, it tends to help people not choose the anger. And then in that process, it seems, we don't have data on this, but it seems to create really potent new neural pathways and networks that allow for that reaction or that action to be taken easier over and over and over again. So the next time an experience elicits anger, it's easier to move past it. The next time it's even easier. And so you think about if that happens with any experience that kind of throws our self off kilter, like, and somebody's, intentionally utilizing this, consistently, it can completely transform people's lives. And so like, I think that's really like the big crux of the benefit of it.
You spoke about microdosing as part of your healing process. What did that journey look like for you personally?
In the beginning, I was microdosing, 2-3 times a day for a couple of weeks. I mentioned I only did it for a couple of weeks in the beginning. And then I took a couple what we'll call low doses that are not so perceptual. I experienced it a little bit more. And yeah, like I mentioned, after that couple weeks, I was essentially 60, 70, 80% healed. After that, I started really getting into it and learning more about it and experimenting like with larger doses and more consistent microdosing. And kind of like I just outlined, like what it seemed to do for me was to give me space. Like it relaxed the nervous system. It allowed me to sleep better. My anxiety levels went down tremendously. But it really allowed me to start looking at the core issues of what was actually going on and what led me to benzodiazepines in the first place and what led me to addiction in the first place and all these issues that I had growing up and, things that of course I still like, we're all human. We all deal with things, but it allowed me to see things in a way it was really gentle and it allowed me to really start making, conscious choices to start moving past these things that have been plaguing me in my whole life.
Why do you think mushrooms are beginning to appear more often in conversations about mental health and addiction recovery?
I think the proof's in the pudding, like, and I think that there's more and more people that are starting to experience this, and the more that word spread, like if you're, if you hear about your aunts who had this experience with psilocybin or whatever, and it completely changed your life, then you're much more likely to try it. And I think that's just, it's like a chain reaction that's spreading. I think that there's also this growing distrust for the medical establishment. And I think that has a lot to do with it also. Also, I think that there's spiritual reasons for it also. I think that they're in some sense, I feel that in some sense they're trying to pop up right now to help heal humanity. I think we're going through this like large shift in consciousness and it's up to us which, direction we end up growing. And I think the mushrooms are here to help us choose the direction that's more in line with our spirits and our higher selves. So for me, this all has a very large spiritual component.
Now, we talked about the bad sides. From the good sides perspective, what are researchers beginning to learn about these compounds in particular in this particular mushroom?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, muscimol. So there's three main compounds. Muscimol works on the GABA system. It's a direct allosteric GABA agonist. So it doesn't trick the brain into producing more GABA. So there's no like down regulation. It mimics GABA in the brain very precisely. So with that, there's no addiction, there's no withdrawal, there's no tolerance buildup, which is really unique for GABAergic substances. As we mentioned, GABAergic substances are some of the worst to get off of in the world, some of the most addicting in the world. You think alcohol or you think benzodiazepines. Ibotenic acid works as a glutamate agonist. It's similar in some sense to ketamine. It's very different, but glutamate oftentimes is responsible for neuroplasticity, things of that nature. And then you have the cholinergic system and muscarine, which works on the cholinergic system. A lot of smart drugs and nootropics work on the cholinergic system. And so people find oftentimes that there's this like potent nootropic quality to it as well, where people might find their, verbal fluency goes up or their memory recall goes up. They're able to think a little bit quicker and move a little bit more effectively and efficiently. Unfortunately, there's like really no research being done on the mushroom as a whole. There's some research that's been done on the isolated compounds, but it's hard to translate that. Like if you have a study done on muscimol and it shows this, and this, like you can't fully translate that to the mushroom because there's so much else going on. But
Going
then
on in
also,
there, yeah.
nobody wants to study. There's no profit in studying a mushroom. So like, like universities it's not popular enough yet to where
Right.
like universities or other individuals want to actually study this. I'm hoping that we're getting there. But yeah, the research unfortunately has been really limited.
Now, your company, Ethnobotanicals, explain exactly what you do. What do you do in your process to bring this product to the public?
So we work with foragers around the world, predominantly Eastern Europe, and it's usually families or individuals that go out and forage during the fall and then dry their mushrooms and sell them to us. We import. We have pretty meticulous, processes to ensure quality and things of that nature. And largely, I mean, I think the bulk of what I do now is education. Like that's like that, and you know the most. We're releasing coaching programs. I'm releasing a book in the next, I don't know, few months, I think, actually a couple of books. So yeah, but it's really like what we're focused on the most is education, and then just that's supplying, you know, high quality material at a price that, you know, you can't find elsewhere.
Okay, now, in what form do you actually market and sell the mushrooms?
We have basically anything that you can imagine. So the raw whole caps, or a powdered version, or capsules, or gummies, or tinctures, or chocolate bars, like, yeah, any way that you can imagine it being consumed. We're working on tea bags, which I think is kind of fun.
And where's your manufacturing facility located?
Los Angeles.
Los
Yeah,
Angeles, okay.
yeah, which is
Hello?
where I'm at.
Okay.
You know? Yeah.
Okay. At some point, your personal healing journey turned into a business. And how did Minnesota Nice transform into ethnobotanicals? How did all of this come into existence?
Yeah, so it started in Minnesota, and I was when I got off benzos, I wanted to do something to keep myself occupied. It was a little overambitious because starting a business while going through benzo withdrawal was extraordinarily difficult. I started a CBD business and a cannabis business, and that was what Minnesota Nice was originally. And then in this, like, as I found the mushroom in this little budding community that was growing around it, nobody was selling it here in the States. So people had to import it from like Lithuania or Russia. And so somebody actually asked me to start selling it, which, you know, I graciously accepted. So we transitioned fully over from cannabis to the mushroom and other legal plant medicines. And through it was Minnesota Nice at the botanicals for a while. And then I moved down to California, I think like 8 months ago at this point. And then we're not in Minnesota anymore. And I've been looking for a new name for a while because the Minnesota Nice brand was only intended to be a local CBD company. And then it became this like global Amanita brand. So we changed the name to Amentara. Yeah. And I think in August of last year.
Okay, building a company around plant medicine, there's a certain responsibility that comes with that. How do you balance your growth with integrity to the community?
Yeah, this is it's a really interesting aspect of all of this. And I think I find that back in the early days, I found that when I was reaching or like trying to make things happen, things would fall apart real quick. So I had to learn to really like kind of take a back seat and just kind of allow things to unfold. It's tricky because like we have to make profit, right? We have to, otherwise we can't continue. And not only can we not continue, but the more profit we make, the more we can get the word out there. So there's this balance that has to be struck. And you know, I'm human. We're consistently trying to make adjustments to find that balance is struck properly. And it's a discussion that we have nearly daily here in the office and with my partners. We like to look at it as we coined the term sacred commerce because that's how it feels to us. And so like, you know, the motive and the intention is always going to be helping the world, and profit will flow from that motive. So, and we try and, you know, keep each other in check consistently and ensure that that's where we're at. And that's how we're executing things because yeah, it is a sacred mission for us. And if we lose sight of that at all, we do ourselves and the business and our customers a disservice.
Well, even financially, that must have been a big jump because I remember, I mean, I was living in San Diego, California, and this had to be late 80s, and I was living in a two-bedroom apartment with a skylight in San Diego, and I was paying $1,200 a month then. So, I
Yeah.
mean, rent and everything is just outrageous in California. So that must have been a big financial, I mean, shock moving an entire company, a business from Minnesota to, you know, Los Angeles, California.
Expenses have definitely gone up a bit.
So what does your mission look like today under the name Amentara?
It's the same mission that it's always been. We're looking to, you know, help. We're looking to give people information that allows them to understand that this mushroom is an option, and then more information that allows them to help figure out if that is an option that's worthwhile for them, and then to give them the option and the ability to be able to purchase the material to utilize on their own. So my mission is largely currently it's largely education and then figuring out how to market it in a way that's in line with our values and our ethos.
Okay, so now let's talk about your Amanita Effect podcast. What is that all about?
It's a really fun platform in which we get to talk with people about their transformational journey through utilizing the mushroom. But it's a lot more than just the mushroom. We tend to get really deep into people's healing journey. And I think that's like, we tend to talk about the most vulnerable and difficult topics for people to talk about. And yeah, it's a fun way for me to chat with customers and people that are in my circle that have had, very deep experiences with this mushroom. And then for those people to, be open and vulnerable and give insight and tell stories that might be able to help the listeners.
How often do you publish your show?
We had to take a little break with the move and rebranding and everything, and we're just getting back to doing it. I think the intention is it's not it's not like a weekly thing. I think the intention right now is we can get back to, once a month or once every couple of weeks. We'll be happy.
What inspired you to start the show?
Just having another outlet for people to get information, and to reach more people, and having an outlet for some of these individuals whose lives have been transformed by the mushroom and the work that they've done, to be able to, be included in the helping of people. Yeah, it's just another opportunity to get the word out there a little bit more.
What conversations have stood out to you the most since launching your podcast show?
I think the ones about there was one that we did with a woman named Gwen, and we there's a really good friend of mine, but we go really deep into the concepts of addiction and like what it means and what the underlying issues are and the spiritual implications. And I think that was probably my favorite conversation that we've had thus far. Um, that's a really good one, that episode.
Have there been stories from guests that you didn't know or listeners that have really stayed with you?
Stories from guests that can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yes, people that you really didn't know. Seemed like she was, someone who
Yeah.
was in your circle. Were there any stories from people who were outside of your normal circles? There's a story that or stories that really stayed with you.
Yeah, James's story was fascinating. He has I think it's called CPSD. I might be wrong there, but it's this they say that it's more painful for the people experiencing it than like childbirth. And
Wow.
yeah, and Amanita like completely turned his life around and gives him like enough relief for him to be able to function day to day, which is those
That's
really, really
amazing.
hearing him
That's amazing.
hearing his life path story and what led him to that, military stuff and everything that led him to his disorder. Yeah, that was really fascinating and really cool for me to hear that, that the Amanita really helped turn his life around. That's really cool.
Yeah, I may have to give the stuff a try myself. I just recently moved here to Puerto Rico, and I've been here a little over a month and a half. But ever since I got here, I've been getting up between 2 and 4 a.m. in the morning. I do have a history of PTSD, but I think what's even I'm adapting to, to getting up so early in the morning. But the other thing is now that every morning when I wake up, my whole entire body is sore. And I mean, I have a brand new bed, a very nice bed, but it's like my whole body, my muscles are sore, the sole of my feet are sore. I've never experienced that before. So,
Interesting.
so maybe I need to give some of your products a try, see if they can help me out.
I'm happy to
Okay.
send you some.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go into flip mode. This is the part of the show where you get to ask me 3 questions.
Beautiful. What what type of music do you play?
Well, I started off with a love of gospel music, but I really love all genres of music. I play keyboards and organ, synth and organ. So yeah, I just love I love music as a whole. I like 70s, 80s funk. I like these rock and roll. I like gospel music. I like classical music. So I like jazz. So it just spans the gamut. I mean, to me, kind of like music is music. People just use different types of music to how can I say their experience or where they're at in life.
Yeah. Beautiful. Awesome. I'm the same way. I like basically everything. I'm also
Yeah.
a keyboardist.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, I started with guitar and then drums, and now I really just play keyboard and piano these days. Do you have any psychedelic or plant medicine experiences?
I had none. There's a mushroom here in Puerto Rico that I'm interested in researching. I can't remember the name of it right now. It that has some anti-aging qualities. And so
Cool.
I'm looking into that. And of course, this whole thing with ayahuasca.
Uh-huh.
I've been, just looking at that, just different, there's a lot of indigenous traditional medicines out there, and I've always had an interest towards it in that, but personally, I haven't taken any.
What would be where is there a barrier currently to that, or is there like where's your thought at with it?
It isn't a barrier, it's just kind of exposure more so. I
Mm,
think something like for me at least, for something like that, that's something that I would more so have a tendency to get into it and experiment with it if I knew someone else who was involved in it.
sure.
For me, I'm kind of isolated and very busy. So I don't get to I just haven't interacted with anyone with any overall experience. And then a lot of what I know from it is from my personal research and from documentaries.
Got it. Understood. Yeah. Well, if you're ever curious and interested and you're out in California, let me know. I'm happy to set you up with
Okay.
the individuals that can help you, move down that.
Definitely. Third question.
I thought I'd bake two into that one. So what got you into biophysics originally? Like, what was your curiosity growing up? Like, where did you want?
I well, I always thought about, being a doctor. So that was but I just really got into biophysics because I thought it was eventually going to be the most cutting edge of science and medicine. And I still think that is the case. But, I wanted to, like I said, that was my major for my first year at UC. Well, for my first, year at UCSD, 2 years actually at UCSD. And then after 2 years, I just went to Los Angeles and went on UCLA. And it just had like more life to it. Everybody at UCSD was kind of bookworms and studious, everything else like that. But everybody at UCLA just seemed like, they were involved in all types of different things. And there was just so much more going on campus. And so I wanted to be a part of that experience. So, I transferred to UCSD and got a bachelor's degree and then went to stay there another 2 years, got a master's degree. So that was one of the greatest experiences in my life. But I'd love to get back into biophysics at some
Yeah.
point.
Cool. Cool. Amazing. Well, thanks for sharing.
The future of functional mushrooms. We're starting to see mushrooms appear everywhere, from wellness shops to clinical research labs. Where do you see the movement heading in the next few years?
I hope that we just see it come out more and more. I think like one of my most ideal visions, and I don't think this will happen in the next few years, but hopefully in the next maybe 10 or so years, is we'll start seeing, like you said, exposure is maybe the barrier to getting into this stuff. Like I hope that we'll start seeing facilities and centers pop up all around the country in which people can can go in and go through, psychedelic assisted therapies or experience a ceremony legally and openly for themselves. Like, I think that there's so much that people can glean from these experiences, but legality is a barrier, and then accessibility is a really big barrier. So I hope that we'll start seeing, legality and then more accessibility for everybody.
Well, I feel so strong about this area of natural products. I call them natural products. I'd like to do something. I'd like to get a few of your products. I'd like to take them, and then I'd like to bring you back on the show and talk with you about my experience taking them.
That sounds great. Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy to send you some stuff.
Because the more people know about things like this, I'm more so even with myself. I'm actually going through a program. I got to finish up where I'm training to be a medicinal herbalist actually,
Cool.
and in a 4-year program. And mushrooms is just a small part of that, but we do like the microdosing, the tinctures, the poultices, all of that. All of that is part of our training. But yeah, I'd really like to, we have a weekly show, and I'd like to use my show as a platform, maybe to help you, help and assist you in getting the word out here. What role do education and responsible guidance play in the growth of this business?
It's the biggest thing. Yeah, it's the biggest thing. And that's so like if one goes on our website, we have educational guides, we have video, we really anything that anybody could ever want or need information is on there. And like that's so important to us. And so yeah, then that ties into like, me doing podcasts and being like, so thank you for opening up the platform to me, because like this is what it's all about. It's all about giving people the information that allows them to make a decision for themselves with more of an understanding. So yeah, so it's the biggest thing.
And for someone hearing about these ideas and these new treatment methods for the very first time, what would you want them to understand before forming an opinion?
I think that the biggest thing that I think it's important to know that none of these things there's no such thing as a magic bullet, right? Like pharmaceutical companies, like they market their drugs as magic bullets. And it's like, and oftentimes that's just more often than not, it's putting a band-aid over a bullet wound, right? Like it's not healing the issue. And that while these plant medicines work differently and address things differently and can help, unroot the core issues, like it's still up to the individual to put in the intention and the work to get the result that they want. It might make it a little bit easier. It might make the path a little bit more effective and efficient, but it's still up to the individual's intention and work.
Yeah, natural products to me, I believe they promote a whole different lifestyle and way of life. And so there's a change that you go through that helps to make all of this work. And it's a fascinating experience. I want you to plug your company, 30-second plug, Amentara. Tell everybody about your company. Tell them how to contact you, where you to look for you online, all of that. Go.
Yep. So it's amentara.com, amentara.com. Like I said, we have all of the information one could ever want. We have all of the legal plant medicines on there. Also, there's guides and videos and yeah, all that jazz. We're on Instagram. It's amentara.shop. One can search my name on YouTube and they'll get a bunch of podcasts or, whatever it may be. We're super responsive. So if anybody has questions, like reach out on the contact form or email us. We're here to help.
Okay, all this information's always on our promos and in our show notes, so my audience will be able to access all this. Christian, if someone's listening today and is going through a difficult season and is searching for healing, what message would you want them to hear?
First, it's going to be okay. The healing path is not an easy one, but it's infinitely easier than suffering, right? So I would also say that like, not every healing modality works for everybody. So one needs to like kind of feel into what sounds right and feels right for them. And I'll also say that like nothing, like I mentioned, nothing's a magic bullet. It's all the output of anything is going to be directly proportionate to the input that you put in and the effort that you put into it. So, but oftentimes like it really starts with just making the clear, concise statement that like, I want to heal. I want to get through where I'm going through. Like, please help me, like that's generally all one needs to start. And then if one is open, like the path will generally eliminate itself to them. So anybody listening that's struggling, like you got this. Like I have faith in you.
Christian, thank you for sharing your story so openly. Your journey reminds us that sometimes the hardest chapters in life can lead to unexpected purpose. To our listeners, today's conversation touched on healing curiosity and the evolving relationship between nature and modern wellness. As always, learning and thoughtful exploration remain essential. This has been the All About Us podcast, where we explore the stories behind transformation and the people who choose to turn struggle into something meaningful. Until next time, take care of yourselves and stay curious about the world around you. Have a great day.